Hi everybody, Rad Mom here. Welcome to the garden on this lovely summer night. We got something short and sweet for you. David Packman had the most amazing caller the other day. It just brought it all to such a point. But first, like the video if you enjoy my content and subscribe to the channel so that we can all work together to drag feminism back into the real world because we need it. Just a little bit of a personal side note. One of our dogs passed away this morning, so that really, changed whatever plans I had for today. So I am bringing to you, unfortunately, something a little shorter this week, but it is still going to be a delicious morsel. Let's go.
David from Regina, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, I guess my question today, you had a caller a few weeks back who was talking about gender and sex, and I feel like something's happening a lot where the right is conflating these two things a lot, right? Like they don't understand the difference between biological sex and gender expression, right?
Yep.
While they're related, they're not the same thing. So I guess my question is like, how the hell do we even start to have that discussion, right? Like I feel like we can't even have a discussion about the issue without people understanding what that even means, if that makes sense. Like, is there anything we can...
So the title of the video is, do they really not understand sex versus gender? Yes. I think most people do understand this distinction. In that apparently we've all pretty much settled on the idea that sex is biological and gender is like social, cultural, right? Okay. Why would anyone possibly confuse these two things? I wonder. Could it have anything to do with the fact that federal law has, equated them for years now?
I feel like, so in the call you're thinking of, I made an attempt to try to explain to the caller, who maybe was just unwilling rather than unable to see.
He made the attempt. Wasn't that big of him? Wasn't that sweet of him? Such generosity. My goodness. Because, he doesn't think this person is so stupid as to actually be unable to distinguish these things. He at least gives them that much benefit of the doubt, which is nice.
I gave the example of The Rock and then the fashion designer Isaac Mizrahi. And I think that in a respectful way, I explained, you understand these are both males, right? We're talking about biological males. They were born male, etc. They're both male. The Rock expresses gender in a much more stereotypically masculine way, whereas Isaac Mizrahi expresses gender in a much more feminine way. Like
in a respectful way. He explained this completely stupid example that has nothing whatever to do with the distinction at hand. Those are both men who, yes, have a very different male gender expression, right? And are we talking about gender or gender expression here? Because I do understand that there is a distinction. One of them is what you feel inside, and the other one is what you do about it, right? Pretty simple. But they throw around both of these terms here, And the federal statute in question is fun. Executive Order on Preventing and Combating Discrimination on the Basis of Gender Identity or Sexual Orientation. Except that if you cannot discriminate, based on somebody's gender identity, then, what does sexual orientation mean? I mean, I guess when we're talking about housing and jobs, okay, but still. And I'm going to be putting this up on the screen, okay, as I read it, in case anybody wants to follow along. By the authority vested in me as President by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered as follows. Every person should be treated with respect and dignity and should be able to live without fear no matter who they are or whom they love. Oh, isn't that cute? All persons should receive equal treatment under the law, no matter their gender identity or sexual orientation. Nothing controversial so far, right? This is dated January 20th, 2021. So this is what they did right after they got in. In Bostock versus Clayton County, the Supreme Court held that Title VII's prohibition on discrimination because of sex covers discrimination on the basis of gender identity. What? Why? That's not sex. We just established that. You know, David and his caller so helpfully established that for us, that there is an obvious distinction here. So what the hell is going on with federal law? How could anyone possibly confuse these things? I just don't know.
The Rock expresses gender in a much more stereotypically masculine way, whereas Isaac Mizrahi expresses gender in a much more feminine way. Like,
yeah, but Isaac Mizrahi does not go around claiming to be a woman. And if he did, well, that would be an issue, okay? Because, wouldn't you know it, sex and gender are like linked and stuff.
So the idea was to get him to think, okay, right, penis, I see that. And then here's one presentation and here's another presentation. Oh, there's more than just the genitalia.
Really, David, could you be any more patronizing? I like how you keep saying that you're being respectful and whatever. Because no, you're not.
I tried, you know. I think sometimes it's like you've got to use examples like that to maybe get them to think about these things.
I think sometimes you have to use examples and break it down to like a fucking kindergarten level. Something a 5-year-old would understand. I apologize that I cannot use that level of example tonight because we're talking about federal law. The head of each agency shall, as soon as practicable, consider whether to revise, suspend, or rescind such agency actions or promulgate new as necessary to fully implement statutes that prohibit sex discrimination and the policy set forth in Section 1. How can you possibly prohibit discrimination based on sex and gender identity when those two things contradict one another? That's why you transition, you know, because if you could just be, you know, a super feminine man like Isaac Mizrahi, this wouldn't be an issue. We wouldn't be discussing this. That's not the point. You know, nice dodge there, David.
But I agree with you. A lot of them do. They don't seem to want to get it, honestly.
Well, and that's just it, right? I think, and I think honestly, like, if they would just take even just like an introductory level course in like any of these social science topics, like,
if you would just take an introductory course to social sciences, yeah, and if you guys would just stop pretending like you don't see the elephant in the room here. I did not catch this caller to whom they're referring. It doesn't matter, really. I don't want to hear them insult this person. Do you? Like I say, we're keeping it short and sweet tonight. Just an introductory course in any of this fuckery, right? Then obviously, anyone who doesn't agree with them just doesn't understand, right? Obviously.
We've talked about this for decades and decades, and like there's really no debate about the difference between these things anymore, right? So
no, you're right. There is no debate about the difference between sex and gender. There's really not. The debate is over whether or not these two things are intrinsically linked. You know, can you just kind of separate the two of them entirely? Can you be a female person with a masculine gender identity? Does that make you a man? This is the topic of conversation. These are the questions. Y'all are the ones who are refusing to look at stuff. But, you know, we've already discussed this stuff for decades and decades. It's obviously settled. That's why no one can stop fucking talking about it, right?
No.
But it's scary stuff. Like, it has a real impact, and you know.
Yes, it is scary stuff, and it does have a real impact, mostly on women. And here we have two men yakking about it between the two of them, once again, acting like they are the smartest people in the whole fucking world. You know, the stupid conservatives just seem to keep confusing sex and gender, and we just don't know why. In Bostock versus Clayton County, 2020. The Supreme Court held that Title VII's prohibition on discrimination because of sex covers discrimination on the basis of gender identity, or sexual orientation. Under Bostock's reasoning, laws that prohibit sex discrimination, including Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, the Fair Housing Act, and Section 412 of the Immigration and Nationality Act, along with their representative implementing regulations, prohibit discrimination on the basis of gender identity or sexual orientation. Just like that. Anything that says you cannot discriminate based on sex, now it says gender identity too. And one of those two things supersedes the other. Under Bostock's reasoning, laws that prohibit sex discrimination prohibit discrimination on the basis of gender identity or sexual orientation, so long as the laws do not contain sufficient indications to the contrary. So unless it specifically says that it's just about women, and none of them do. We would not want to actually try and make up for any of the historical deficits that feminism is supposed to be about.
We're definitely frightened up here in Canada watching your Supreme Court do all these weird things. So
Yeah, we're definitely frightened down here watching the Supreme Court do all these weird things ourselves. Yeah.
yeah, I hope you guys can turn that around with the next election for sure.
The Supreme Court is not going to be decided in the next election, friend. That's not how American politics work. Supreme Court positions are for life. So until one of them dies, we're stuck.
Is this an issue that's even really discussed where you are, or is it just like people don't really talk about this?
I'm in Saskatchewan, and we're kind of the most right-wing place in Canada, so like it's conservative haven here.
Apparently Saskatchewan is the Bible Belt of Canada. You heard it here first. I did not know this. You learn something new every day. And they really don't discuss gender identity up there. Shocking. I know. You know, it's interesting because I sort of live in the Bible Belt of the United States, being here in Tennessee, and wouldn't you know it, there is increasing talk about gender identity here in, like the school systems and stuff. But that is for another night, for another video.
But as a country as a whole, I mean, it's discussed, and there's like kind of a fringe movement of people who want to do the whole mega thing here. But I would say as a majority, I don't see that happening. I don't see that movement getting a lot of traction. Even here in the conservative kind of Bible Belt of Canada, while it's more popular here, some of these ideas, they're still not getting enough traction to like influence a lot of policy and that kind of thing. So I'm hoping we're safe. I mean,
Editing Sarah once again, just wanting to say that that was them equating automatically, MAGA stuff with this crazy confusion over sex and gender. Which, I don't know, I think that executive order on its own pretty succinctly demonstrates that that's not true at all. For right now, I am going to call it because it's been a very long day. Thank you so much for joining me for this tasty little morsel with David Packman and his amazing Canadian caller. There was a lot more here, but join us at noon today for the live stream and discussion, and we will dig out all those extra little nuggets that I missed. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you at noon for the live stream and discussion, and then next Saturday at 11. Very cool. Bye. Hello? Uh-huh.